Hey, what's up, everybody? I decided to go ahead and record this today. Let's just get it over with. We already talked about the early Christians. The second part is dealing a lot more with Charlemagne. So, who was Charlemagne? Charlemagne was he was one of the only German kings that almost successfully put back together the Roman Empire. Sometimes we call it the early Roman or the Holy Roman Empire, but it wasn't really Roman because it was dominated by German tribes. It wasn't really holy because even though everybody said they were Christians, they were running around killing each other. And it really wasn't an empire. It was more like a collection of kingdoms that he had conquered and they swore allegiance to. So I know that we've already covered some of this, so I'm going to start about where some classes ended, and I'm going to kick it off with where because some of you are like a few slides ahead of this. Some of you are a few slides behind, but this is where we're going to start. And then tomorrow we're going to have a test on this slideshow. So just remember tomorrow, test on this slideshow. And with this video, I will at least post from slide 17 down with the test. And that way you guys don't have to take notes while you watch it. But I want you to watch it. And then tomorrow we'll have the test on this. So with that said, this was a slide that Chris Lobos put together. I'm going to move myself down here. And, like I said, a lot of you have already done this slide. But the big thing here is what this slide is showing is you got barbarians marching into the Roman Empire, right? And there's like a Roman building that they're sacking. So you got the Ostrogoths and the Visigoths. Well, what happened to them after they storm into Rome? Well, they settle down. They build farms. And you see this line here where it says the Germans and the Romans merged together in the Western Empire. Well, the two groups, they're living side by side. It's natural that they start to intermarry with each other. That's probably going to end up happening with our Hispanic and our, Anglo communities someday. You fast forward a couple hundred years, those groups all might just merge together into one big group. And then we'll all be speaking Spanglish instead of Spanish or English, right? Anyway, you get German young man marries Roman young woman. And what we start to see emerge is a blending of the two cultures. So instead of being Romans conquered by Visigoths or Romans conquered by Ostrogoths, you get a new people kind of emerging out of this, and that would be the Spaniards, the Italians, the French, the English. All right, so next slide. New dramatic kingdoms. So both Visigoths, the Ostrogoths and Visigoths structured the Roman government. They kind of take charge. Dramatic warriors came to dominate the native populations. They pretty much kicked the Romans out of power. So they take the top roles of power, and they're not all that sophisticated. So things kind of start to go downhill. Now, the Roman families do stick around. They stick around in the sense that, a lot of them take over church organization, right? And so they become like the popes and the bishops and kind of the power group within the church. Now, I just want to remind you, eventually even these groups begin to kind of merge together, right? And so, you get people in the church that are predominantly like Roman families. They still intermarry with the powerful German families. And, we fast forward about 300 years. Nobody can tell like who's German and who's Roman. And no, we don't have that anymore. Instead, what we got is you're Italian, right? All right, so the new dramatic kingdoms. So this is, I think, where a lot of people left off. The Anglo-Saxons were the tribes that moved into England. And so what was in England before the German tribes that moved in? You had a group called the Celts, which is where we get traditions like Halloween and Day of the Dead. You had a mixing of Celts and Romans, so there were still some Romans around. They were kind of mixing with the indigenous Celts. And then you get German barbarians like Vikings invading the coast. Now, these Angles and Saxons are where we get basically our English language. It's a language that originates from Germany. The Angles, that's where we get the term English from. And eventually that becomes the dominant culture on the island. Now, that's not to say they don't mix with the Romans and the Celts, just like the other groups around the Roman Empire. And the merging of those two groups together ends up forming the modern English. All right, so it becomes the ancestors of those Angles that eventually, colonized the United States, right? So in Spain, it's the opposite. It's a little bit more Roman dominant. The language and the culture, as the Germans move into Spain, they start to adopt more of the Latin language, and they adopt more of the Roman culture. And so whereas England becomes more kind of German dominated, Spain's more Roman dominated, and that's where we get the Spanish language from. All right, now, here it is. The big German kingdom that almost reunites Western Rome were the Franks. So out of all the German states, the kingdom of Franks was the longest lasting. The Frankish kingdom was led by Clovis, a military leader. He was the first dramatic ruler to convert to Christianity. All right, now on your video, I know they talked about Clovis. He was a brutal guy. He was not a nice person. And I think Linda's trying to be really tricky here because we went through this in one of my classes yesterday. But was he a Frank and a military leader? Yeah, he was. Was his name Clovis and a dramatic ruler? Yeah, he was kind of that too. Was his name Clovis and a Christian leader? Yes, he was that too. But it's really none of these because if you read it, it says Clovis, a military leader. And they've got Frank, a military leader, was the first German ruler. So she doesn't have first German ruler written down to convert to Christianity. I don't know. It's confusing. I would say none of these. I'll double check that question. I might have to drop that off the quiz. It's just too confusing because really all of those things are right except for maybe A. All right. Anyway, this is the kingdom that Clovis puts together, and then his descendants expand upon that conquest. So you can see that they take Western Germany, they take all of France, and eventually they're going to push down into Italy. All right. So Clovis's army faced certain destruction. Clovis was said to have cried out to God in AD 500 when he left his enemies. Clovis soon became a Christian. So Clovis became an atheist, a Buddhist, a Christian, or a Catholic. He became Christian, right? Now, there's some debate as to why. There's a claim that he had a vision. But a lot of people think it was done out of greed and selfishness because the people that he conquered were Christian, and he could get some more support, more warriors in his army. By the way, nice picture by Tatiana Garcia Tati. Got a picture of Jesus on there. All right, so the kingdom of the Franks. Clovis's conversion to Christianity won him lots of support. And there you can see actually how big his kingdom becomes. Actually, this is under, this kingdom is at its height under Charlemagne. So the Catholic Church wanted the friendship of a major ruler in Germanic states. Clovis's conversion to what won him support? It was conversion to Christianity. So look how big this empire extends. It's really, if we combine the countries of Germany, France, and the northern half of Italy, that would be their empire. And even stretches down into like the northern part of southeast Europe. All right, the kingdom of the Franks. Clovis established a new Frankish kingdom. He defeated Germanic tribes around him and consolidated the Franks as a people. After Clovis died, his sons pursued Frankish custom and split his newly created kingdom among everyone. Franks were kind of notorious for killing each other's brothers and sisters. The ruling class was made up of relatives of the king. And so whenever the king died, there would be an internal family feud, and sometimes brother would kill brother and, to try and become the next king. So it got pretty ugly sometimes. So Clovis unified the Franks as a king. Let's see. Let me reread what she says here. Clovis unified the Franks as a people. Right here. It says Franks as a people. So that would be B. All right, Germanic society. So Germans and Romans began creating new societies. That's where you get that kind of intermarrying. Now, keep in mind, this doesn't just happen in 500 AD. But by 700 AD, within a few hundred years, you start to get generations of Germans and Romans living side by side, intermarrying, and a new culture kind of emerges out of this. And this becomes our medieval culture, right? It's Christian. There's German folk values. In addition to the German folk values, you get a lot of Roman laws and traditions. All right, so Germans and Romans began creating a new society. Social customs of family from Germans was an important social bond among the society. Husbands and wives, children, cousins, and grandparents. So what culture started creating a new society? Well, it was the Romans and the Germans. So it'd be C on that, Germans and Romans. I love that picture too. There they are, beginning a new society, kind of coming out of the Dark Ages. So German family structure. In the German family structure, males were dominant and made all decisions while women were their father's property until they were able to be married away. Then they became the husband's property. So what happened when women were married away? They became the property of their husbands, right? So that would be D, right? And I believe that's our last slide, slide 25. See, that's why I wanted to go ahead and do this with you guys. I knew I could get through it really quickly. And again, I think I gave you maybe 8 slides here. And so let's look and see how much time we have involved in that. All right, that only took me about 14 minutes. So what I'm going to do today is we'll probably watch another video, which should be something fun on the Middle Ages. I might show you about knights being killers. And then you got this. I'm going to have you go through it. Tomorrow you're going to have a test on this. And then probably starting pretty soon, I got a couple more games I'm going to do with you guys. But we got some more learning to do about the Middle Ages. Because early Middle Ages, or what we call the Dark Ages, is all about what's coming out of this power vacuum of Rome collapsing. But eventually we get to a period in time we call the Middle Ages, which is a time period where these new cultures start to evolve. And that's where you get a bunch of warring kingdoms and knights in shining armor and stuff like that. So that being said, there's 15 minutes of your class time that we just took care of. I'm going to put this on Edpuzzle, and I'm going to send this out to you. That's what we're going to do today. We probably should be talking about Edpuzzle anyway. All right, guys, good luck, and I'll see you in class.